What's up, everybody? Welcome to Chamber Lunch and Learn. Get plugged in every week, Wednesday at 1 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Alex, I see you cracking up. Let me make you co-host. I love it.
Thank you for representing the Eastern time zone people.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Join Chamber every week. For those of you that are new, I'm Dr. Sharon Elephant. I'm the CEO of the Nonprofit Plug. We've got Amber Anthony, the strategy specialist. Together, we are Chamber. That's how we roll. We'll get started in about 1 minute, but I do want to start with our usual. Let me pull the chat up. What's up, Erica? Hi, Karen. I love seeing some earliers. Hey, Nikia, Patrick. Oh my God, Kay. Is that the Kay who I think it is? You better show your face. She's stuck on mute. Hi, Heidi. Welcome to the show. I see Felicia, Maurice, Erica, Candace, Emily. Welcome, everybody. Oh, you have the kids. Oh my God, Kay. Well, I'm sending you so many kisses. I have known Kay for almost 10 years from the gym. Amber from the gym. Okay, so today is awesome, you guys. This is everyone wants to avoid the topic of insurance, but we just cannot do it. We have to have non-insurance, whether you're a for-profit organization, a nonprofit organization, insurance is critical. So Amber and I have a special guest for you all today. We have Eddie with us, and Eddie, I'm totally not going to do you the justice. So I'm going to hand it off to you to do us a better intro. But you guys, Eddie has been working with the Nonprofit Plug for, I want to say 2 or 3 years, for sure 2 years. And he takes care of the general liability insurance for all Nonprofit Plug clients, nonprofit, for-profits. He does the insurance for our firm at the for-profit and not-for-profit level. He is the go-to for everything mitigating risk for your nonprofit organization. So without further ado, oh God, I forgot the most important thing of the day. Eddie, I'm so sorry. Hold on. Do we have any wins, accomplishments, and milestones? Oh my God. What do we have to share today? Anybody? Come
I
on.
don't have any, I'm sorry. I don't have
Go ahead,
any
Karen.
like really wins or well the accomplishments is remember when we did the Give Butter presentation?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell everyone that they have been having workshops on building your Giving Tuesday platform for Give Butter, and it's just been amazing. Today is day 2. So I would encourage you to look into that because we got the Give Butter from the Chamber Show. Thank you for
That's
that.
awesome. You are so welcome. That's fantastic. I love hearing about that. We'll make some announcements too on social media because Give Butter is doing a ton of free workshops to help everybody prep. And because Facebook is no longer playing nice with fundraising on Facebook, you'll want to have a platform like a Give Butter, a Network for Good, Antidote, or really, Zefty, any of those. Our favorite at the Nonprofit Plug is Give Butter. That's why we promote that one because they're the easiest to use. Most intuitive, the most resources for free. So definitely take advantage of that. I'll share a win. The Nonprofit Plug is officially has our non-for-profit arm. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we have what those of you are used to us as is our LLC business organization. And now we also have a 501c3 not-for-profit arm so that we can provide more free education, training, and access to resources for everybody. You get a nonprofit. You get a nonprofit. You get a nonprofit. Okay. Let me stop taking up all the time. Do we have anybody else that wants to share anything? I'll
I
take
will.
that. Oh, go ahead, Maurice.
Yeah, so with the help of you, we got approved approval letter for 501c earlier this month. So that's definitely a milestone, and we're going to keep pushing, and great things will happen in the future for us.
Awesome. Congratulations to you and Erica. I
Thank
can't
you.
wait. Would you like to share with anyone the name of your nonprofit?
It's Youth Ways Beyond Watts.
Youth Waves Beyond Watts. And they will have a website published by today or tomorrow morning. So you guys will be able to check them out. We'll post that in the groups for everybody to check it out. Youth Waves Beyond Watts.org. Very cool. I'm really proud of you guys, Maurice and Erica.
Thank you.
All right. Eddie, the floor is yours. Bless us and make insurance fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're too kind, Dr. Sharon. Thank you for this platform to be in community with you all. Thank you, Amber, as well for the extending this invitation. Yes, my name is Eddie, and I've been in the insurance business probably for the last 22 years, largely coming from just working as a graduate student, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. But this popped up, and I continue to do work that I think is important, not only for mom and pop shops, but for-profits, nonprofits, those who are interested in protecting their assets. And so when Dr. Sharon asked that I come and talk to you all briefly about what it means to have insurance in a nonprofit, what that might look like, how it might work for you. What does it mean to have directors and officers coverage? What does it mean to have general liability coverage? How does that protect me? If I were, we're in a litigious society, particularly in California. What does it mean to get sued? Does my insurance protect me in the event that something like that happens? And so I'm here to be an advocate for you all to think about how you might think about insurance coverage, but also here to answer questions, but also to try to clarify anything that you might have as it relates to your own nonprofit. And so with that, I will start off by saying that if there is ever, and I see Dr. Sharon has already posted that in the chat, if there's ever need to ask questions for follow-up, feel free to send an email to me or my staff. We're happy to respond to you in a timely manner. Number two, we also have a website, teamworkswest.com. If there's ever an interest in just a quote, you can actually go onto our website, and then whatever type of coverage you need, we're a full service agency. So you can just go on and request a quote. It's going to have you input information. You'll hit the send button. That information will come right to our team, and we'll be able to generate you a quote within 24 hours. So that I think is a very user-friendly platform for you all. I know sometimes you don't have time to email and fill out a sheet, but if you just go there and ask for a quote, all that information is right there for you. Let me start with some basic information for those who are part of the nonprofit world. Typically, as Dr. Sharon alluded to, when nonprofits come to me, they're typically looking for one or two things. One, as it relates to insurance. One, they're looking for directors and officers coverage. And you might ask me the question, well, what is that? What does it cover? Why do I need that? Well, in California, you do need insurance coverage. You don't necessarily need directors and officers coverage, but you do need general liability coverage. So those are the two sort of coverages that I'll prioritize in my conversation with you all today. But I think what might be most effective, Dr. Sharon, is once I finish sort of an overview in broad strokes, that they have an opportunity to ask me questions. So with that, let me start by kind of talking about directors and officers coverage. So if you start a nonprofit, you likely have members that are associated with your nonprofit that are titled directors, right? Treasurer, president, vice president. And each of those individuals will play an integral part in the sustainability of your nonprofit. They'll probably be going out public facing, talking to different individuals, talking about the messaging, pushing the messaging forward. And so anytime they're representing your organization and they're engaging in conversation, they're providing advice, they are exposed. They are someone where if I were in conversation as a third party, could potentially say, I don't like what you're telling me. What you're telling me is misleading. I now have a financial burden placed because I listened to you. Therefore, I'm going to sue you. Again, I'm making this up, but these are the reasons why we get it. We have car insurance in California because we're required, but it also protects you in case something happens. You're not expecting to get in a car accident next week. So when it comes to directors and officers coverage, some of the most bizarre things can play out for you, but to know you have insurance coverage to protect you and your personal assets. If you have a home, if you have major assets and you don't have coverage, there is a possibility. I'm not a legal counsel, but there is a possibility that they can go after your personal assets. So the goal is to protect what you have by getting coverage that some cases could be minimal. Some cases it could cost you a little bit more maybe than you're expecting. I know the question's going to come up, so I'm just going to address it right now. How much does this stuff cost? Right? And it depends. I know you don't want that answer, but I'd say over the course of the average of nonprofits that I've worked with, directors and officers coverage will cost you on an annual basis about $1,000 to $1,200. All right. But again, I can't give you anything definitive because I need to know the nature of your business, what you're doing, and how that plays out. I have
Eddie, what typically makes it a little bit more expensive? It's the ones that provide like youth programming or work with homeless or, high risk populations.
Right. Well, that's a good question. And my answer would be that honestly, they're all around the same ballpark. Some people, in addition to directors and officers, might add general liability. They might add auto coverage. They might add workers' compensation, which drives up the price. But I'll say this: most of the nonprofits are working in social services, community engagement type work. So prices are driven by the classification and the actual risk. So if you're working with minors, you might be subject to a higher annual premium than someone who is not. Why? For obvious reasons, right? And so that's how I don't make the prices. I just try to find the most competitive markets so that you can come back to me and say, this price is much better than what I was quoted elsewhere. So that's really the goal. And obviously being in the industry for a while, you try to figure out what are the carriers that likely will give you the most competitive prices. So that's directors and officers, broadly speaking. I'll move over to something I think if you say, hey, I'm a new venture, I don't necessarily have officers right now. I'm the sole owner, person solely responsible for what I'm doing. I don't necessarily think, and by the way, I don't have many assets, so I'm not worried about those personal assets that I have. That might be true. But I will say, if I can convince you on anything, that general liability is probably something that you want to highly consider. And what is general liability? Similar to directors and officers, it's protecting your assets. But more so, general liability is protecting you in the event of a third-party encounter. So, for example, I typically define or describe general liability as if someone trips and falls, right, you might be liable. So if you are if you have a nonprofit and you're out in the community and you somehow cause bodily harm or injury to a third party, your briefcase drops on someone's toe, or you set up an event and someone slips because the floor is wet, right? So again, trip and fall, injury to a third party. The general liability protects that third party. It protects you as a nonprofit. So the question that comes up, well, if I'm injured as part of this, whatever happened at that event, am I protected as well? Yes, the business is protected, but it doesn't protect you for like medical costs or anything like that. You would have to get your own health insurance to cover you for any doctor's visits or sort of medical expenses that plays out as a result of your general liability. It does protect the third party. If they have bodily injuries, physical damage, yes, your $1 million which is standard, liability policy would protect that third party. Let me pause for a second, because for those who are new to this, this is a lot of information to process. I'm sure if you have questions that are tailored to your own individual nonprofit, I'm sure others will have similar questions that they'll want, or
So
like to hear.
one of the comments and questions in the chat that just came up is asking about typical cost for general liability insurance and what does it cover? And just maybe kind of going through again, what does general liability insurance for a nonprofit cover? And then she also stated that her tax attorney said that most free or volunteer services will be protected by the law under stewardship, but the process of law suits will need, I have something blocking my screen, financial upfront costs, so insurance will come in handy. Can you, is that anything?
To the latter question, I'm not going to purport to be a lawyer, attorney, or a legal counsel. So whatever your attorney says or your legal counsel, I would say listen to them. I don't know. I don't know if you're a nonprofit, you're and under your stewardship that would protect you. But I would also advise in this insurance brokerage business to say I would also get insurance coverage and not rely solely on that. But again, your legal counsel can kind of flush that out and make more sense of that than I would. To the other question, Dr. Sharon, around general liability, most nonprofits and even for-profits have a standard general liability policy, which is $1 million. $1 million. So if something happens where someone files a claim, and in some cases you'll have a general liability policy that has a $0 deductible. Sometimes it has $1,000 deductible. Sometimes it has a $2,500 deductible. And obviously, with any insurance claim, if there is a claim, you would have to pay a deductible, right? Or not, depending on whether or not there's a deductible. And so if I say you have $1 million standard policy, if someone is injured, a third party, and they're claiming damages, and it's approved by the claims adjuster or representative of, say, for example, $300,000. That's $300,000 of the $1 million in your policy term that you would have toward that injured person. And you have up to $1 million for that policy term. It does not roll over even if you renew your policy. So when you think about like the likelihood of exposures to liability, you want to ask yourself, is $1 million enough? Am I doing something where there is huge liability on me and there's a higher risk for what I'm doing that might require me to have more than $1 million? Is it possible to get more than $1 million? Yes, it is. But typically when you do, it's the underwriter that's going to question, well, what is the nature of your business as a nonprofit that's going to require you more than that? And then there's going to have to probably be some compelling justification for increasing those limits. But again, as just to reiterate, general liability is trip and fall with the third party. So if they are injured physically, and it could be emotionally, if someone feels that the information that you're providing them, for example, in their community, causes financial hardship or causes some sort of emotional damage to them, and again, I know this can sound bizarre at times, they can file a lawsuit. It doesn't mean that the claim is going to be approved, but I'm just giving you scenarios where in the nature of the work that you're doing, the likelihood that things can come up where there might be an exposure, where you might be subject to something that you would have to use your general liability insurance policy. If you are at a neutral site, or if you're at an event and you cause damages to the furniture, to some aspect of the building, your general liability policy would protect you. Again, it may not be intentional. It may be accidental that you cause. I've seen cases where the insured, our client is like, there's no way I did that. I wasn't even in that area, but that person is seeking damage, damages, calls for the damages to their premises. And it could have been calls 5 weeks ago by someone else. And they're like, no way did I cause that. You have the option. And I'll say this, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds. You have the option. You can say, you know what? If that third party comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to use your policy because when you were at the event there, you put some holes in our wall. And you're like, well, I wasn't even in that room. There's no way we could have done that. So you have the option. You can say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to engage with you in this. I'm not using my insurance policy. What typically happens, though, is that if you go to an event, if the owner of the event is smart, they will ask to be an additional insured on your policy. And if they're an additional insured on your policy, you typically have to give them a copy of your insurance certificate. So they'll have that information and they'll probably call the insurance carrier directly and say, I'd like to file a claim, and here's what happened. You as the nonprofit person, you can't determine whether or not a claim can move forward. It's up to the claim adjuster. So you're at their mercy. Only thing you can do is tell your story. This is what happened. This is what I did while I was there. Then they would hear the other person's part, the other party, sharing their story. And then the claim rep would then make a determination who was at fault. Sometimes they protect the insured. Sometimes they protect the third party. I stay out of it. We're just the facilitators. We're just the messengers. So as much as I'd like to say this person didn't do it, they have a history of just being very upfront, forthright, ethical in their practices, but unfortunately, they don't account for that. So hopefully I'm sharing enough information with you that at least would get you to reflect on what it means to be in a nonprofit and the things that I need to do to ensure my personal assets are protected, but also my business, my nonprofit is protected. Because you don't want to be in a situation as a nonprofit where you're constantly doing business, you're constantly, engaged in bad practices that's going to require you to utilize that insurance policy when in fact, if you're engaging in practices that you certainly are upfront with and trying to do things right, you will likely minimize the need to even use your insurance policy.
This is how I kind of think about it. We all have cell phones and you have the option to get cell phone insurance or not. When I don't buy insurance, I drop my cell phone in the toilet. When I do have insurance, I don't have any issues. That's how I like to think of as insurance. It's to protect yourself and to protect your organization, to protect your board of directors, to protect the clients that you serve and all that good stuff. Before I open it up for questions real quick, one of the chats, Coach Lottie, she has a nonprofit organization called Pass It Forward Foundation. They work with youth. They do tons of like sports and wellness and health fairs and cool stuff like that. They pay about $2,300, $2,300 annually for a $2 million liability insurance policy. And she put the details. Oops, sorry, that's Alex's comments. I'll get to that next. She put in there wanting to know if that's really a decent range for what she has as insurance.
Well, first and foremost, I'd say send me your deck page and I'll generate a quote. That looks like the quote the company you're probably with is USLI, it looks like. If I'm not mistaken, United States Liability Insurance Company. Well, without you even putting the carrier name down there.
It's NIAC.
Yeah, so if it's not, then I probably could get you a better rate.
God bless you.
So clearly, based on what I'm seeing in the chat, you work with youth. And most standard general liability policies have the additional coverages for professional liability. So I didn't talk about professional liability, and I'll answer this question, I promise. So general liability, the rule of thumb is trip and fall, right? Third party. Professional liability is what teachers, what insurance brokers, what lawyers, those who are consultants, those who are using their expertise to offer information to another party, that's where you need malpractice, professional liability, or what we call errors and omission, E&O coverage. So I'm here today sharing information with you all. Guess what? I have professional liability coverage. Why? In the event that someone says, hey, this information that Eddie's offering us, I'm not even going to go further with that. I don't even give you all any ideas. Where am I going with this? So professional liability, that's typically what you have. Dr. Sharon has professional liability. Why? Nonprofit plug. She's always engaging the community, aspiring nonprofits, current, new venture. You need the professional. You're huge exposure, right? The other piece that I was going to comment on from the chat is the sexual misconduct, molestation, sexual harassment. Yes, I coach youth. I coach baseball. We have a nonprofit. We have insurance coverage, molestation, sexual, all of that. Are we expecting to use it? No. But of course, in this day and age, you certainly need it. You got assistant coaches. You got to protect them as well. So I think what you have in your policy, I think, is standard and needed in terms of annual premium. I'd love an opportunity to give you a comparison.
Sorry, I had my hand raised, but thank you. I don't know if I can just respond for a second. Is that all right?
Sure. Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So do you encourage like organizations like this? Because I am a professional coach as well, and we do provide that service, right, through my organization for our USA track and field athletes, both on the professional side and the youth side. Would you encourage me to have professional liability insurance on top of what we have?
Yes, as a coach, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Because what are you doing? You're providing instructions. You're providing ways to develop their athletic talents, right? You're giving them information. If they tell you, hey, my coach told me that I should be doing 8 sets of 12 squats every day and not take a break, and all of a sudden they pull their muscles and they're no longer able to prepare for the Olympic trials, then of course, if they have a representative, they might be blaming you for the outcome, right? So absolutely, you want coverage, because I always say, hey, I'm always around good people. Nothing's gonna happen, but you never know what might play out in this world that you might need to be protected. Others in the chat that said yes, if you want a comparison, I'm happy to do that with because it sounds like many of you might already have current insurance coverage, but sometimes if you can save an extra $500 a year, $400, I think that's worth it.
Eddie, I forget. I can't remember because I've looked into it before. Can you do insurance policies for our clients that are outside of California? We have quite a few clients that are Oregon, Washington, Florida, Texas, all East Coast, and a couple Midwest states.
If I cannot, there are a couple of states that I can do it in. If not, I just ventured out with one of my closest friends I'm Teamworks West, he's Teamworks. He has way more states that he's located in, and so I can always pass it along to him.
Okay, we have one of the attendees today, Miss Kay. She's actually located outside of California, even though I know her from California. She's located up in Oregon and Washington, and she has a new nonprofit also. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. Perfect. So
when you file your articles, are they in California or are they in Oregon?
No, hers are Kay, I forget, but are your articles filed in Washington State? I think that's what they are. I'm waiting for her to respond on the chat. She's got her kids right now.
Yes.
They are? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Washington State, Eddie.
Okay. Yeah.
And then another individual asked, can you get better rates than USLI?
If I'm being honest, I'd probably say no. Not with the comprehensive coverage and the competitive rate. I might be able to find somebody who's less expensive, but you don't have the comprehensive coverage that you would want, particularly if you're working with youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
That'd be my most honest answer for you.
I think that's a valid answer. That's good.
Yeah.
And then what's the difference between someone's asking between personal car insurance and nonprofit car insurance?
So
if there is.
You're a business. It's a business. It's a nonprofit business. And if you're functioning as a business and you're using your car for business related purposes, you need commercial auto insurance, business auto insurance, right? So there are some who put their branding, their signage on their car. Even more reason to have business commercial auto insurance. The difference between the two is that if you're doing business in the auto and you get into an accident, you're not supposed to be covered. I'm sure people figure out ways to finesse it, but you're not supposed to be covered. So I've seen it where people are driving around with their personal auto coverage. And let's be clear, personal auto coverage is less expensive than commercial auto insurance. Typically with commercial auto insurance, you need $1 million combined single limits. For personal auto, you can do 15, 30, 30, 50, right? Which is less expensive than a commercial policy. I just did one yesterday where someone was like, I have State Farm and I'm paying $1,000 for my truck, my pickup truck, and he does plastering work. This is not a nonprofit. And I quoted him what Progressive was $2,400. Well, what's the difference? Well, one's personal, one's commercial, the short answer. But the other piece is there's a bigger exposure because now you're telling me that you're doing commercial type work. Even though you're not like hauling things, you're still in the commercial side of things. And, I jokingly say, but serious, you got to pay the cost to be the boss.
Mm-hmm. That is the truth. Okay. Alex, I'm going to get to the grant stuff here in a second, but let me get, Vicky, do you have a question? I see your hand up.
Hi, I do.
Hi, Vicky. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Sharon. How are you? I do have a question about the fact that we're a virtual organization, and being a virtual, we provide services on the phone for peer-to-peer support. So we will be working with children. I would say youth pretty much, but it also allow children to have other children to be heard and to share what's going on, to share their feelings, to kind of having different categories of situations so they can actually go in there and listen to others and to share and also to know they're not alone. So it's a suicide prevention situation. And it's a suicide prevention nonprofit, and we do mental health mainly. And we provide rescued food with free delivery to post chemotherapy patients that are just discharged from the hospital that are very weak. And we provide rescued food to them and their family with strict regimen. We will be providing food that actually be ordered by the doctor. So with that said, we are doing very much virtually through CRM. So I was wondering what kind of liability would that be? We're not hands-on.
Yeah, but but you're still offering a service, and it seems under the sort of umbrella of mental health. And so just the exchange that you're having with your clients is an exposure, and I'd say a big exposure. And so nothing really changes when it comes to insurance coverage. You still need to protect your assets, right? In the form of not only general liability, but given the fact that you're taking calls, you're offering advice and consultation, the professional liability piece is important. You may not, youth, if you're working with youth, those under 18, I would highly encourage molestation, sexual harassment coverage, even if there's no no contact or in-person meetings that you're having. There could be conversations that might lend itself to something that might expose you in some way. So that would be my advice on that front. The fact that it's virtual, in this, for what you're doing, I don't see a difference in somebody providing in-person work. They look at the actual risk. I don't think they don't get into sort of the nuances of what is their day-to-day operations. If you say I'm doing social services, supporting mental health, that is no different likely than somebody who's engaging in the community.
Thank you very much. The other part is, would it be lower since we're doing, it's kind of Zoom like this, it's like we're having Zoom meeting right now. So right. I don't know how it would be so high liability. Maybe the perception of a certain communication or advice that might be taken the wrong way, possibly.
Right.
But besides that, I don't know what physical. I think somebody has their hand up. I think Amber wanted to share. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to this discussion because I too work with children. And so, again, in a completely worst case scenario, you're obviously speaking on what's happening transparently on Zoom, but the individuals in your organization may reach out offline. Mm-hmm. And so that's typically how, or via social media or what have you. And that's typically where things can get a little difficult.
Oh,
and that's where your exposure is.
I forgot to add that we do allow people to be anonymous, and the people who actually are, should I say, moderators, are actually, they would have a number. They can't use their name, and that is that's the important part right now, is that you can be anonymous because it allows people to share, but when they register, they have to be transparent.
Yeah. So I guess the one thing I would say about this is that it seems to be like two separate issues. One is a question around so I'm not an underwriter. So you would share with me the nature of your business, the details of that. I would send it to our markets, and our markets would determine this is the risk, this is the actual premium. Right. So that's one answer or response to the question. The other is what it sounds like to me is you're asking, like, shouldn't there be a difference in premium if I'm fully online versus somebody who might be in person? That's a good question. But from my experience, there isn't a difference. And it's usually a number that classifies that risk, and anything that falls under that social services. And if you're dealing with minors or not, that number could change, or that classification could change, but that then is reflected in the premium. So as much as I'd like, which it makes practical sense, that if I'm not walking into the store, it's less likely that I'm going to get hurt or get injured or slip and fall, versus just being virtual and trying to engage with you online. That makes reasonable sense. But unfortunately, sometimes being reasonable is not the process, because there's usually an algorithm about how they determine these premiums. So the last thing I'll say, again, without getting into the weeds, if you're a trucker, like, California has the worst rates for truckers because there's been so many accidents in California. So it's the law of large numbers. So because there's been so many accidents, California, as compared to, say, Arkansas, the premium in California is much higher.
Great questions, you guys. I wanted to touch on real quick too, another key component for having insurance for your organization, whether you want it or not, is when you start to apply for grants. It is typically required by the grant application. Most of you know Alex, she's in my top right corner screen. I don't know where she is for you guys, but Miss Alex is the Director of Capacity Building and Funding Services for the Nonprofit Plug. And so she is deep in grant applications and all sorts of fun stuff every day. And she actually posted this, a grant opportunity that she had been working on, and they have a pretty major requirement for their general liability insurance, who it has to name, the additionals insured, a $2 million aggregate, and like all these extra things. So it's really smart. Not only is it smart to have insurance just for the protection of the organization, but it's also, if you're going to be going after city, state, grant, federal funding, your insurance is going to be required no matter what. So you might as well already be insured and in place covering your organization. And then as you get these funding opportunities that come through, you can demonstrate the coverage and the professionalism that you have for your organization. Alex, am I missing any kind of details or key components to grants and having insurance?
I thought that was a great overview. The only thing I would add is that for that CFCI Amity application that a lot of people are going to be going after soon, it just got posted 2 days ago, and it's due in January for anyone who's interested. The link's in the chat. But they will actually cover the cost of additional insurance that you don't have. So we can put that in the budget if you're working with the nonprofit plug, and they would actually pay for that for you, and like anything above and beyond what you currently have. So a lot of funders will also take that into consideration as well if they have really stringent insurance requirements.
That is awesome. Wow. So that's cool. So California residents, so for the Californians on the call today, the grant, it has just been posted. Alex put the link to the grant application in the chat box. It's the CFCI Amity Foundation grant. And how cool is that? So there are foundations out there that are aware that expenses come to nonprofit organizations, and they're willing to help with overhead expenses such as insurance and things like that, which that's awesome for you, Eddie, too. So we can get additional insurance.
Yep. Anything I can do to help. Yep.
I love it. Okay, perfect. And then Alex dropped the grant application again in the chat. So all you Californians on here, especially nonprofit plug California clients, y'all better be applying to that, because those are like 100K plus level grants, aren't they, Alex?
It's for 3 years, and it's up to 1.2 mil, like up to 400,000 a year. So they're big.
Awesome. Okay. Any other questions from the group on insurance for your organization? Eddie, I'm going to have you just do a real quick, brief overview. What is general liability insurance for a nonprofit organization, and what is D&O insurance for a nonprofit organization? And then I'll open it up for questions right after that. So just give us a real high quality cap of that.
Yeah. So general liability, one is protecting your personal assets, and it is also protecting you in the event that a third party trips and falls, gets injured, bodily or otherwise, where you may have to pay out a claim. So that is important. If you're at an event, you're in the community, and something you do causes harm to another party, this insurance coverage would protect you. Directors and officers, if you have a new venture and you've already have established officers for that business, if they're out messaging, advocating for your group, and something happens where someone is impacted by your officers and they like to sue you, then that directors and officers coverage protects those directors as well as the assets that you have personally.
And then just one more time, you're able to cover all Californians and organizations here, and there are other states you're able to serve.
Correct.
So for Vicky and for Kay and those that we have on here from other states,
yes,
I will still reach out to Eddie, and he can either help you, and if he can't, he'll have the connection to help you.
Yes.
Okay. And Eddie, I'm going to drop your email address in the chat one more time. Okay. So I'm going to leave it open now for general questions for Eddie, for me, for Amber, anything that anybody has that they've got questions about, insurance, nonprofit organizations, anything in the nonprofit sector. We are getting ready for compliance season. Giving Tuesday's coming up. What questions do we have? Come on, no, we got some questions.
Hey, Sharon, I don't have any questions, but thank you for the link to the foundation that assists with the insurance needs. And just thank you, Eddie, for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. That I knew about insurance, but man, that I just got schooled again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? It can be on any topic in the nonprofit realm: insurance, governance, compliance, finances, grant writing, capacity building. Any question anybody has?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I was at a meeting last night, and this is for the nonprofit world. And we were talking about grants, and they were talking about one of the things that a nonprofit should have is a certificate for procurement. And I wanted to know, did you know anything about that? Now, that may be just in California.
Yeah, I don't know, Alex, if that's something familiar that you've run into, or Amber. I'm not familiar with the certificate of procurements, certificate of insurance. Yes, that's a thing with Eddie. But for the procurements, that might probably be, that sounds like an LA County thing for sure.
Right. Okay.
Like that screams LA County all over it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I'm just trying to do my research, because one of the things that they said was a lot of nonprofits don't get grants because they don't have the certificate of procurement, which is something to look into. For those
Yeah,
of us,
absolutely. And especially if you're going after county and federal funding, that's usually when they require those kind of things. So, it's very local dependent, and it's very city, state, and federal level dependent. Federal requires the most for the most part.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Good question, Karen. And then Kay, to answer your question about your determination letter. So typically you won't be able to apply for grants until you have your IRS letter of determination, because they want to see that you're a federal level designated, approved, tax exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization. However, you can still solicit and accept donations. So I would focus on your local foundations, your local partnerships, your local donors, and people in your network to really bring in funding and fundraising for now until you get that determination letter. Ooh, Alex, great question. Let me get Vicky's question and then I'll get yours. Vicky, do you have another question you wanted to ask?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sharon. I'm asking about if there's any free grant writing classes, number one. Number two is there any organizations that actually charge very low for grant writing? I've seen grant writers who gets paid $2,500, but they didn't win any grant. But I don't know how much effort a person puts, but to take $2,500 for one grant, it's a bit much, not anything promised. So I was just wondering, is there many grant organizations, companies out there, and person out there, and what is the right way to do it? I heard before they allow to take 10%, but that's a lot. So I think that's might be off the table according to the ethics committee. So what is the proper way to do when you're a new organization, a nonprofit? Thank you.
Sure. Great question. So if you are a newer nonprofit organization and don't really quite have the budget built for capacity building and funding services, taking some grant writing classes is an excellent start for you. You can just Google, Vicki, free grant writing courses, Center for Nonprofit Management, Grant Station. A few other organizations do provide some assistance for free with grant writing and learning some grant technical skills. Our organization does provide capacity building and funding services. I would say kind of on the lower level for organization. Our programs start at $1,000 per month and then go up from there. And then to answer two of your questions, one about that $2,500, it depends on what type of grant they were applying to. So if it was like an online easy application portal, that's a little bit crazy. But if it was a foundation grant, if it was a complex grant, if it was a federal grant, those can cost up to $2,500 or more dollars. It depends on how robust the grant writer needs to be in the research, the writing, the development, and how ready are you as an organization? Do you have your impact data? Do you have your programs? Do you have all your filing paperwork? So it's really a partnership between you and your grant writer. You cannot rely on your grant writer 100% to handle the situation. So that, to answer your question on that one, it just kind of depends on what type of grant it was. And then to answer your other question on the ethics of grant writing, my firm does absolutely not allow commissions and percent based on grant applications. It is not ethical for several reasons. Number one, the grant you're applying to more than likely is a restricted grant and you cannot use it for anything other than that grant application states for. So for you to take a percent of that and give it to a grant writer is not only unethical, it's against the grant guidelines, and they can take the grant and the funding back from you. So we don't operate that as our firm. Not to mention, I would never ask anyone to work for free. So our grant writers are paid upfront, and just like an employee, because they are employees, and just like any business operation. And it takes a lot of work in capacity building and funding services. Alex, I don't know if you want to touch on that, because that is your daily challenge. And then Heidi, I'll get to your question.
Yeah, again, that was excellent. That also goes against the code of ethics for the Grant Professionals Association, which I'm a part of. So I would just mimic exactly what Dr. Sharon said. And some other resources that have free online learning or cheap online learning is, I like using Udemy for just everyday things. And the Nonprofit Ready has a lot of great resources, especially for board development and board training. And then also, if you're looking for like raising money, then maybe fundraising might be a good place to start. There's a lot of organizations that'll give you anywhere from 40% plus by working with them for fundraisers. So maybe fundraising might be a good place to start, especially with Giving Tuesday around the corner.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Becky, does that kind of answer most of your questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a platform that I would use for fundraising that she mentioned about?
Yeah, GiveButter is an excellent one. That's the one our firm endorses, is GiveButter, but there's tons of them out there. GiveButter's our favorite.
Yeah, I remember that you sent me that. And also is to change the mission. It's not change, but to tweak it a little bit with the federal, when we apply for the 501c3, is it easy or hard, or do I have to pay extra to kind of change the wording a little bit?
Depending on how much you're changing your mission, if you're going from, the suicide prevention to a dog rescue, that's going to be completely different. But if you're staying within the realm of social services, you don't need to report that to anybody.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All right, Miss Heidi, welcome to the show. What questions you got?
Thanks. I just want to respond to Kay's question regarding raising money before getting the determination letter. We did that while we were waiting. We were not applying for grants, but we raised money from people we knew, friends and family, and the community at large. I'm a fine art painter, so I was even offering paintings as thank you gifts. And we raised about $15,000 that way within a couple weeks. And I found, and I was very transparent, very open, told everyone that we did not have our determination letter yet. But I found most people were wanting to give because they wanted to give and they wanted to support our efforts. And so just because you get a tax write-off is not the only reason people give. So I would encourage you to plunge into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And check out our recent Instagram posts on 92. Well, now we're at like 90 something days or maybe 89 days left of the year. And I posted 91 days of fundraising, low cost or minimal expenses. And I think one of them may have actually been artwork and kind of things like you're doing, Heidi. My mom actually does that. She's an artist, she's a painter, and everything she paints, she sells it, and 100% of the funds from the sold painting goes to a nonprofit organization that she's volunteers with. And oh my gosh, I've seen some of her paintings sell for like $5,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's definitely a great way to fundraise. People love the custom and unique art, and you may even use that at an auction one day. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you. And Miss Nikea, did you have a question?
Hello, Dr. Sharon. Question, or actually it's a recommendation. So I was thinking that maybe the Chamber Show could possibly put on like a low cost how-to, because it's like you give us this great information, you gave us this massive list, but how we get to it is a whole nother thing, right? And we're all kind of starting off, new nonprofits don't really have $1,000 a month, but maybe we could all pay for like a $99 4-hour real intensive type of workshop where at least we know what we need, we know how to call our top 50, we know what to say, we have a script, so on and so forth. So that's just my recommendation.
I love it. We're actually going to be launching a boot camp mastermind right after the first of the year to really dive into the details of the how-to and like how we've done it as nonprofit executive leaders and how some of our other clients have done it. So we can go into that and really get the nitty-gritty and walk us through, the steps. So I think that's an awesome idea, Nikea. Eddie, question for you. Some of the individuals on here, and then I'll close it out, have LLCs as well. Do you do insurance for you? Well, clearly you do insurance for profits, but is that something that is fairly in the same realm, and you do for-profit, not for profit? Because some of these individuals, Alex, Amber, and other ones have LLCs also.
Yes, we actually do more for-profit than we do nonprofit. But that's yeah, interested in a quote, just go to the website. We're full service agency, so whatever you need, we offer. So, but I'm also happy to circle back with any questions one may have about an LLC or another entity.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This was one of our Get Plugged In Lunch and Learns. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next week. We've got topics for the rest of the month. I think next week is actually on fundraising opportunities and how to end the year with a bang on all fundraising opportunities. So be sure to join us next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Reach out to us on social media. We are here for you guys at the Nonprofit Plug. Have a fantastic rest of your week, everybody. Thank you for joining the Chamber Show.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon and Amber. Have a great week.
Bye, Karen.